This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are interviewing the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom Harav Bar-Hayim. Several days ago, Muslim extremists from Chechnya targeted the Boston Marathon, causing death and many grievous injuries. Does the Rabbi have any insights into this tragedy?
The Western world is being tested by the Muslim world, the world of Islam. The Western world does not understand Islam. Islam is not, first and foremost, a religion. A person who reads the Quran quickly discovers that Islam is in fact a political ideology of conquest. This is precisely what the founder of Islam, Muhammad, did in Arabia when he founded his religion. He immediately used it to take over all of Arabia in the political sense. And then, within a short space of time, his followers swept out of Arabia in order to conquer as much of the world as possible, and they did rather a good job. They got as far as India in the east and Spain in the west. The Western world must understand that it is headed either for annihilation and destruction at the hand of the forces of Islam, or for a confrontation, a showdown with Islam, in which they will have to destroy this blight on the face of humanity. This is the stark and unpleasant truth, but at least it has the advantage of being the truth and not allowing us to live in a fool's paradise. At the present time, the Western world in general, and Europe in particular, and unfortunately the United States is also going in that way at the present time, are not interested in dealing with the facts and the realities of the situation, but rather with appeasement. Just as the world tried to appease Hitler before the Second World War, they even allowed him to grab Czechoslovakia, and it was a very close thing whether they laid down an ultimatum to Hitler regarding the invasion of Poland. That was also not such an obvious and clear-cut decision, but in the end that was what happened, and that led to the Second World War, which was a terrible and horrendous event in the affairs of humankind. Nevertheless, there was no other way but to face the evil of Hitler and Nazism and stare it straight in the face. This is something that people like Winston Churchill understood many years before the outbreak of the Second World War. He spoke about it at great length. He warned of what would happen, and unfortunately people preferred not to hear. The trouble with the Western world is that it is too involved in its own pleasures, one could even say hedonism, too involved in itself, in its luxurious lifestyle, with its pension plans and hedge funds and holiday cottages, etc. The Western world has not got the stomach at this point in time, does not yet have the stomach for a showdown with the Islamists, whereas the Islamists are willing to suffer, they are willing to live in hiding, they are willing to continue on this path of jihad, of making holy war against those who do not accept Islam. They're willing to do this for as long as it takes. 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, it makes no difference. It took the Muslim world many generations, nearly 200 years, to be rid of the Christian crusaders who came here to the land of Israel. Of course, neither of them belonged here, but both of them thought they belonged here. It took them 200 years almost to be rid of them, but eventually they did. They have perseverance. That much one has to give them, and this is something that the Western world and Israel for that matter, need to learn. We have to learn to be able to go the distance, and all of this is also predicated on something else, and that is a clear moral compass to know the difference between right and wrong. Moral relativism is what is eating away at those who are viewed by Islam as its enemies. The non-Islamic world is not willing to view Islam and those who preach violent Islam as the people that they are, people who are bloodthirsty, who create mayhem and destruction and death wherever they turn. One only has to look at a map of the world and see where the conflicts in the world today exist, and one will see the vast majority of them involve Muslims in a major way.
I noted that within a few days of the Boston Marathon attack, 2 missiles fell on Eilat from the Sinai Peninsula. There was no reaction in the world to the landing of those 2 rockets in Eilat. Why would you say this is the case?
As I said before, this has everything to do with a lack of moral clarity and resolve. If it were clear to our leaders here in Israel, in the United States, in Europe, if it were clear to these people that this is a fight to the death, a clash between civilizations and philosophies of human existence which are completely incompatible, and that there is a right and a wrong side in this conflict. In other words, if we were not overly enamored with a liberal perspective, as Robert Frost once said, a liberal is a man who is too broad-minded to take his own side in a quarrel. The West, and even Israel, is much too broad-minded, much too liberal in that sense. We always justify the enemy, we try and understand them, we make excuses for them. And they, the Islamists on the other side of the equation, they never take responsibility for their actions. They always will blame someone else for their shortcomings. They will always make excuses for those who perpetrate terror. They condone terror. They even, in many countries in the Islamic world, teach and educate people to accept and embrace terror and bloodshed. This is the reality, and this is what leads to the ineffectual and morally unacceptable, impermissible response or lack of response to the outrages of the Islamists throughout the world. And this is also true in Israel. We have in Israel certain leaders and politicians who know how to talk the talk, but very rarely do we see them actually know how to walk the walk. And this is not going to change until the moral perception changes. This is where it all stems from. The root of everything begins in the mind and in the heart, in the clear perception of what is right and what is wrong, and what the enemy intends to do if we allow them to do it. And as it has been noted, all it takes for evil to triumph in the world is for good men to do nothing.
Thank you, Harav Bar-Hayim, and a word to our viewers. If you would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with Harav Bar-Hayim in honor or memory of a loved one, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.